welcome to New York State Manufacturing Now, the podcast and video series that's powered by Fuse Hub. I'm your host, Steve Melito. I'm here with my old friend, Tom Basile from Square One Coating. How are you, Tom?
Doing great, doing great.
Tom's been on the podcast before, out in
Yes.
Herkimer at our annual June event, and today we're in Syracuse. And, well, just in case you didn't see that podcast, what does Square One Coating Systems do?
Basically, we're a metal finishing firm. We have all types of different coatings: zinc, silver, gold, tin, copper, anodized, conversion coatings, all sorts like that. We now do paint also, military paint, stuff of that. So
You're a successful New York State manufacturer.
yes, when we met Fuse Hub, we had 3 employees.
Okay.
And Everton came on over to visit us. I remember that still. And even though we were small, he found us some assistance and aid on some programs. And then over the years, Steve himself helped us tremendously. He lined me up with our biggest customer, and it's growing even further now.
Well, it's nice to hear that, Tom. Thank you. And to Square One's credit, you come to events, you reach out to us when you need assistance.
Yes, definitely. The events, we've made a lot of connections at the events. I gotta say, I have 3 customers here today at this event right now. And they're smaller, but still we connect. They help us connect to other people they do business with, and it's worked out very well with the 3 that are here. So
Good, good. Now, Tom, one of the things that Square One coats, they're called bus bars. I wonder
Yes.
if you could tell us about what they are, what you do, and why people should come and find you if they need to have their bus bars coated.
gotcha. Bus bars are basically an electrical connection system. It's a copper piece first. We put nickel and silver on it because silver is very conductive. And it's used in a wide variety of electrical applications. We do it for various customers. We have a very large one, that's the one Steve found us. That right now is probably going to double in size and production in the next 3 months. That's how fast it's growing. And then we do, I can mention this customer named GE. We do stuff for them, same processes, but they're for big, huge generator systems. GE has got a huge contract on generators, and we're a part of it, so we're thrilled about that.
It's fantastic. And so, Tom, you mentioned that when you first heard of Fuse Hub, Square One had 3 employees.
We had 3 employees, yeah.
How many do you have now?
52.
52, and did you add on to the building recently?
We've now up to 30,000 square feet. We doubled in size.
Okay.
And just the other day in the management meeting, Lloyd discussed putting another addition on. Our biggest bus bar company is asking us to go larger bus bars.
Larger,
So we do, right now it's 4 foot roughly. They want us to go 12 foot.
Okay, and Lloyd is Lloyd Plouffe,
Lloyd
who's also
Plouffe.
on the Fuse Hub board. Great
Yes.
guy, owner of the company.
Yes, yeah. Lloyd's done a great job with his innovative, how he wants to develop a company. He's created a company based on service first. It's not, quality's always automatic, but his thing is you got to have the service behind it.
And how do you do that? Like, everyone talks about having good service, but what do you do concretely in your industry to deliver on that promise?
You look at your customers' needs as far as how fast can you do certain tasks, like quoting.
Okay.
Everybody wants it as fast as possible because everything's a rush right now with the military applications that we do also.
Yeah.
So quoting's got to be done very quickly. We also have to have quick delivery.
Okay.
Quality, again, is automatic. You have to give quality no matter what. And pricing also has got to be competitive. But Lloyd's pretty good at all that. Lloyd does a lot of the quoting for the company still. And when I call, I do the follow-ups, and they say, yeah, we're very competitive. And I'd say 99% of the feedback I get is always very positive, so I'm happy to see that.
Good, that's a great thing. And they can get a hold of you by phone or email. They're not going across time zone, continents, all those things.
Right. My customers would actually call me directly on my cell phone. Is what they'll do. A lot of them. And typically Lloyd's philosophy is if it's an emergency, get out there now. But that's few and far, thank God. But we do strive on meeting our customers as much as possible and giving them the service they want. And I'm also probably friends with most of my customers now, so.
And you still make sales calls the old-fashioned way. You actually go knock on doors, right?
I do it periodically. I call. I have very good relationships with all my customers, but I still will stop. If I'm in a sales call at a customer and I'm in a business park, I'll look see what else is there, and then do some background check quick, drop off our literature, and go from there.
And that served you well over the years for sure.
Yes, our sales have basically almost doubled in the last 2 years, or better.
Doubled in the last 2 years. So this is why Lloyd's not going to let you retire?
No, he won't let me retire. No.
I can see why.
He's going to make me work till I'm 90. No, just kidding. No, we enjoy what we do. That's part of it. If you don't enjoy it, you don't want to stay, but we both enjoy what we do, and so does most of our management team. They're very good at what they do, and they enjoy their jobs. We got a very positive, management group, so that helps a lot.
Nice people. Tom, thanks for being on New York State Manufacturing
No problem.
Now.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to New York State Manufacturing Now, the podcast and now video series that's powered by Fuse Hub. I'm your host, Steve Melito. We're here on day 2 of the New York State Innovation Summit. I'm here with Geoff Halstead from Faction Networks. Geoff, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's been a fantastic show.
Good. Well, first and foremost, thanks to Faction for being a sponsor at this event. We appreciate your continued support. You were out there at Vitality in the Valley with us, and you've been to a number of events.
Yeah, no, Fuse Hub is, when my co-founder is from Silicon Valley, San Jose. I'm from the East Coast, and when we came out here the first year, really last year to Fuse Hub, it really changed the course of our company. We were more focused on the consumer kind of VPN market, and then we saw what you had here, and we also kind of talked to a lot of manufacturers and kind of realized there was really a crying need in the market in this area where because of Fuse Hub, because of this innovation ecosystem ability to reach these customers, really felt that was the formula that we could be successful with and really have a much bigger impact with our product.
Sure. So tell me about Faction Networks, the business. When did you get started? Who's involved? How long you been around? What's coming up next?
Yeah, so it depends what date you're counting, but I'd say we first threw a little bit of money into the pot back in March of last year, started developing. We kind of got to the end of the year where we had finished the platform, and then realized again, partly because of being at Fuse Hub, we said, we want me and my co-founders have a few gray hairs. We've been through this a few times. We said, before we go to market, we're going to take a deeper look at this whole business segment and where we can best serve customers. So we spent about 3 or 4 solid months, did some events with you, really talked to a lot of potential customers. Felt like we understood now really our customer and how to get to market, and then we started to move back into raising capital to kind of finish the product. Along that path, we discovered this fantastic program up in Rome, New York called the Orion Assured Program. And that is a program, it's an Air Force research lab program with 2 private partners, Quanterion and AIS. And specifically, its mandate is to vet cybersecurity technologies focused on IoT, Industry 4.0, smart cities, UAS, how to protect all these devices and systems, right? For accelerated adoption to the US Air Force, but also all of DoD, as well as really kind of giving things a stamp of approval, almost like an underwriter's lab, for commercial, because I think their vision's the same as ours, is that we've reached a stage with the internet where you need military-grade zero trust security for everybody. Like it is, when this thing breaks out with the kind of new age of hot cyber wars we're entering, right? They're going to come after your businesses and everything else, not really the military so much, right? So, and the military has been hardening itself for at least a decade, but that's not happened at all in the civilian sector.
This is true. Let's talk about your technology. You mentioned protection. My understanding is the way that you protect is by taking devices off the internet. Is that right?
So we call ourselves Zero Trust for the rest of us, right? So the quick story is, look, about a decade and a half ago, pretty much everybody in cybersecurity came to this one resounding conclusion that VPNs and firewalls, which were the dominant way of trying to protect ourselves from internet threats, were fundamentally, incurably, architecturally vulnerable, not suited for the way the internet evolved, and said, okay, we have to do something about this. They came up with something called Zero Trust Networking, right? That was a bit, a step forward. Last decade, a whole bunch of unicorns were minted out of Silicon Valley. 2 problems. One was, okay, the only companies using this are enterprises because it's so damn complicated and expensive. And even in enterprises, they're only using it at the top levels, right? So basically the rest of the enterprise is still behind a VPN and a firewall. And then second was that they still, they're not really zero trust. They trust the cloud. They trust themselves, and we have now enough evidence to know that you cannot trust the cloud. You cannot build an architecture security based on any trust in the cloud. Like you have to basically assume that will be compromised, You have to assume your own company will be compromised, right? And that's where we started with Faction, was okay, we're going to start with those assumptions, because that's what we've seen, that's what's happening.
Okay.
Nobody else wants to talk about it, but that's what's actually real. That's what we face now, is the internet, cloud-based things. It's not the cloud is bad, the cloud is good. It's good for reliability, robustness, so on. Is a terrible security architecture. So we got to go back to how we network, and that's what Faction Networks did, was okay, let's create true zero trust networks that have no exposure to cloud, no exposure to us. When you create a Faction network, you create a network with your own keys, even we don't have visibility into it. We can orchestrate it, but you create it, you control it yourself. So that's the foundation, was a zero trust networking, then we could talk about kind of other things we added from there.
Yeah, so part of your product is, I'm going to call it a box, you call it a pod, it's a hardware device.
Yep.
Do you think you'll make any part of that in New York State?
Yeah, so I was talking about our zero trust journey, right? We kind of, I guess we're the fanatics, you want to call us that, but we said, we're going to take zero trust seriously, and it slowed us down coming to the market, but we kind of got to the final frontier where we said, wait, what about your open source software? So we were taking off-the-shelf sources. We have found 3 manufacturers that don't actually make routers in China, which is a huge problem I'll come back to. But okay, we found one in Lithuania, one in Texas, and one in Taiwan, but the problem is that every time I look on the TV, I see like warships circling Taiwan with their live fire drills about their invasion, right? So supply chain security here is a real issue, right? It's not like some theoretical thing. And so yeah, we got to the point where we said, okay, if we're going to be the true zero trust guys, we got to take ownership of hardware. All your software is useless, right? It's worthless if the hardware is compromised. And that's what we're facing today. Over 90% of our routers are manufactured in China, including the chips. And again, literally they're coming backdoored. I'll talk about a study we just completed with Leahy Center, but literally you must assume, again, that hardware is compromised. So all that zero trust security everybody's selling is worthless, right? So we got to that point where we said, okay, if we're going to do this, we're not a manufacturer, but what we can do is go find some manufacturers that understand this, see the opportunity, and that's what we found now. We've got a manufacturing partner right here in central New York.
Good.
We'll be in a position by Q3, Q4 2025 to make everything here, including the chips, by the way, because Global Foundries, who got $1.5 billion from GoSemi, they make exactly the kinds of chips that are needed. They just don't make right now the exact chips, so they can darn well start making them because this is a national security issue, right? So yes, we're trying to be in a position so by the end of next year to have everything made in America, full supply chain, Orion assured, through the leading cybersecurity lab in the country, and then adding our proprietary zero trust technology inside. So we can really create the gold standard in a way that enables, finally, and I think the key thing about Faction is this focus on ease of use. So that it's actually something an average user, small business can deploy themselves and use and protect themselves.
So you don't have to be a big defense contractor. You can be a small to medium manufacturer.
I mean, that is our core focus. Now, the good news is that we're finding a great path to contracts in defense and the government because, ease of use is ease of use. Everybody needs cybersecurity. Everybody needs a better, level of zero trust. But yes, on the most part, at the high end of DoD, at great expense and a lot more complexity, they have, kind of protected themselves. Same thing enterprises. But the gap in the market is everybody else. There is nothing available below this kind of 1,000 to maybe top end 500 person company tier that, people that can have and use zero trust security. It's too expensive and too complicated.
Right. So let's talk about hardware some more. You shared a story, it was in the news about how the Israelis essentially took out Hezbollah leadership on pagers. Are there any lessons there?
Yeah, so I guess the way I spoke about that was that, that's a perfect, very visceral illustration of supply chain risk, right? I mean, that is like, you need to understand that's what we're talking about. Now, I don't think there'll be exploding routers. I can't guarantee there won't be.
Right.
But I do think that the cyber equivalent is what we all need to be worried about. I mean, literally, we just, so we took 5 Chinese-made, top popular brand routers, and we apply a software process to turn them into what we call pod, which is this router, but it can only connect to one network in the world, your Faction network, right? But that was more testing, software, process, da-da-da-da. But we said, of course, we're not going to use these, we found other sources, but we sent those routers then to the Leahy Center in Burlington, which does a chip-off analysis for the FBI, Secret Service, NSA. They're always looking at consumer devices to understand like what's underneath there. I just got the report back like 3 days ago, And of those routers, you know, all of them had over 60 CVEs, critical vulnerabilities.
Okay.
3 of them had, you know, at least 7 that were what we call level 9 or 10, so remotely exploitable. So that means it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter what software you have on top. Underneath you, in the chipset, in the board, you have remotely exploitable vulnerabilities, right? Okay. And so everybody should be paying attention to this, because the other thing about these chips is that, you know, chips are reproduced, right? I mean, so if you talk about what goes in an enterprise router, they don't remake, you know, the Wi-Fi chip for a 5,000 production run. They go buy that off the market. So we haven't done the research yet, but we're following up with that with the SUNY College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, Cybersecurity. We're going to do a study and find out where else all these chips are being used, but it's almost certain they are pervasive throughout most of the routers, business routers in the country. So again, that's what we're facing, is you have to assume that we are backdoored, or could be, and that if they come to shut us down, they won't be there to steal the data. They'll be there to shut down the routers. Yeah, they'll be there to blind us, to kneecap our economy. There'll be no routers available anyplace else. You know, the chips and everything's made in China. You can't replace it. It'll take months to try to, like, you know, reverse engineer and fix these things. I mean, so, you know, again, maybe that's the worst case scenario, and maybe we hope it'll never happen, right? But we're just kind of like, you know, as a country, we can't be taking this risk, right? And then the flip side of that is that, you know, the router, edge router market in North America alone is billions of dollars a year. Okay. They last every 4 to 5 years, right? You have to replace routers because there's a constant upgrade cycle. So everybody's already buying routers, right? And they're just buying them to the tune of billions of dollars a year. They're just replacing them. They're currently made in China compromised routers with new, even better, more compromised routers made in China, right? And so it's not even like there's not funding. The money's there. People are buying them, and so all we have to do is kind of have the will, right? And the leadership, you know, certainly some that's political. What we've been hunting for is kind of demand signals and say, hey, show us you will have buyers. We convince a manufacturer to put together a production line, industrialize, you know, this process, and we can solve this problem. It's not a hard problem to solve. It just takes a lot of moving parts that are hard to coordinate.
So where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Where do you think the company's going to be?
Yeah, again, what we see is that, you know, there's no reason we can't flip that entire captive supply chain, right, of router production made in China to the US. So that's multiple billions of dollars annually that, you know, we're going to be, I think, the leader. We seem to be the first ones, you know, leading the way. Obviously others will follow, but that'll be a big part of our business. And then really, you know, we are also a SaaS software business, right? So it's a zero trust security for the rest of us. The way we first kind of looked at this market, you know, we thought about it was like Zoom. You know, if you looked at, you know, the video conferencing market in 2017, 2018, you never would have believed that there was room for some new entrant. It's like there was a couple dominant companies, a whole bunch of free stuff. Like everybody can use Skype for free. Why would you want to pay for video conferencing? Well, they just made it better and easier. And turns out that was like really, you know, a really big market, became a really big company. And obviously the pandemic came along, kind of became transformative. We see certain things, you know, similar to that. And then what we're saying is, hey, we're just making zero trust security better, easier, and actually secure, right? And literally nobody else is until you're willing to own the hardware problem, right? All your zero trust claims are essentially worthless.
Geoff Halstead, thanks for being on New York State Manufacturing.
Great, well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks so much to FuseHub for all you've done.
Very good.